Hello, everyone. Today let's see about the for loop in Python. Also we can see some different examples and usage of for loop iterations in Python. Let's create a list called mobiles. Now we will add some objects to the list. First one, I call it a stone breaker. Here comes the second one, the sleeping fire. Then the third item, I prefer it as royalty collector. Fourth one, I don't know. Fifth one, I call it the pioneer. Now that we have 5 items in our list, let's try a simple for loop which will iterate through each one of items in the list and print them out to the console. In this simple for loop iteration, Python will assign the keyword mobile to each one of the items in the list mobiles and print them out one by one to the console. Also lists in Python are ordered, so the iteration should also go through the same order as we have created the items into the list. Let's run this code and see. Perfect. Now we can see the output in the console as expected. The for loop iteration has gone through each one of the items in our list and printed that out to the console. Pretty simple, right? Let's comment this out. Now, we can see how the same type of for loop can be used for iteration through a string. Yes, string will be considered as a sequence of characters, and thus we can iterate through each one of the character or letter and perform desired set of actions. In this code, the keyword alphabet will be used to iterate through each character in the string, Motorola. We will then print these characters to the output console. Okay, let's run this code. As we can see, the for loop has iterated through each of the characters in the string Motorola and printed them out as expected. Perfect. Let's comment this out. Next, let's see some of the conditions that can be used within the for loop. These conditions are very useful to perform certain set of actions only on some of the items in a list or characters in a string. Here we will iterate through all the characters in the string Motorola, but will only print them out if the character value is equal to 0. Let's run this code. Perfect. As intended, the code has printed out the 3 characters that meet the condition. So here we can clearly see that the iteration is done for every character in the string, and the desired set of action, which is printing out to console, is applied for only those that meet the if condition. Let's comment this out. Next we will see how to stop the iteration in for loop. The principle is simple. The for loop will iterate through all of the items until the given condition is met. Once the condition is met, the loop iteration stops and the desired action can be performed. If the given condition is not met for any of the items being iterated, then the loop completes and then ends. In this code, the expectation is that the for loop iteration is done for every character in sequence and printed out to the console until the character matches the condition. Once the loop finds the character R, it will then print that character and exit the loop. Let's run this code. Perfect. We can see that the printed output in the console is the characters of the given string Motorola, and the last character printed as R, and the loop has exited without printing rest of the characters in the string. Please note that the loop has stopped with the code break. If there has not been a break like earlier case, the code would have only stopped after completing the iteration through every item of the string. Let's comment this out. Further, we will see the for loop iteration in a list of dictionaries. Dictionaries is one of the data structure used frequently in Python to store data paired to unique keys. So with an for loop iteration in this example, we can see how each of the dictionary can be accessed. We will call our for loop to iterate through each of the items as we did in earlier cases. Here the items are dictionary, unlike strings which we saw earlier. So when this code is executed, we must see each of the dictionary being printed out to the console. Let's run this code. As we can see, the code has printed out both the dictionaries in the list above. So any desired action can be performed with a dictionary by replacing the line print mobile. Please leave a comment if you wish to see more about the dictionary data type in Python. Let's comment this out now. Next we will see an example on nested for loop. Sometimes the situation may arise that we would need to do more than one iteration cycle on the given data structure. For this we will use the same list we created at the starting of the video. The goal is to first start the iteration with the item in the list, and for each of the items inside the list, we will run a for loop. So in this case, as the items inside the list are string, we can iterate through each of the character in those strings. Also, we will print a new empty line in our first for loop, that way we can more clearly see what's going on in those two for loops. Let's run this code. Perfect, as we can see in the console that our first for loop has printed out the empty line as it iterated through each of the items in the list. And for each iteration through item in the list, the second for loop has started and iterated through each character in that item or string. So using nested for loop we can perform desired set of actions on each of the for loop. Please note that when we want to use break in nested loop, then each of the for loop should have its own break. Meaning in this case if we use break in the inner nested for loop, that will not impact the iteration of the first for loop. Let's comment this out. The for loop iteration can also be used to perform some repeated actions for defined number of times. Let's see in one such example next. We can get use of the range in the for loop that will enable us to do multiple action cycles. First we will write some code to understand how the range works within the for loop. We have passed a value 5 in the range here, which will run the loop 5 times. The goal is to print out the values being assigned by range. Let's run this code. Normally the index in Python starts with 0. So that's the reason we see 0 to 4 printed out to the console, which shows the loop has been iterated for 5 times and printed out the values being assigned by the range function each time. Now let's do some changes to the code. Instead of printing out the values assigned by range, we will print out the string. So the expectation here is to get the string number printed out 5 times. Let's run this code and see. Perfect. As expected we can see the string number printed out to the console 5 times. Let's comment this out. Lastly we can see an example of range in for loop with a defined start parameter, unlike the default one we just seen before which always start at 0. In this case we will execute the same action as before, but with using an start parameter of 2 in range function. The expectation is to print out the value assigned from the range function and as well as a string on each iteration for the for loop. The loop should start with the value 2 and end when the value is 5. Let's run this code. As we expected we can see the console has printed out from number 2 to number 4 and also the string has been printed out 3 times. Please note here the iteration stops as soon as the value becomes 5. So the code inside the for loop has not been executed when the value is 5. That's all for this video. Thanks all for watching. Please leave your comments below on improvements or new topics you would like to see in future. And please do like and subscribe if you wish to see more videos in future. Nice day. See you all.